Clarence, could you tell me a little bit about your experience in the residential school?
Well, I think the worst experience, and I'll go to that one right away, is getting strapped when we were speaking our language. And when I came to the school, that's the only thing I knew how to speak was Indian.
And what was the team day for you at the residential school?
When I first came, it was you worked half a day and went to school half a day. And when you got up in the morning, of course, you went to church. And when you went to bed at night, you prayed. So that was about, covers it pretty well, I'd say.
How did the residential schools affect the people, would you say?
For all the people, I would say for speaking our language, it almost killed it in my group down. And I would say you'd have to be a pretty strong person when you're young if you got strapped and not lost your language. I know what it feels like firsthand.
And how did the formation of the reserves come about?
I think by Sir James Douglas. That was set up. He appointed a guy by the name of Cox to do our reserve in 1862. And I think Sir James Douglas was the governor of the Crown Colony of what we know now as British Columbia.
And why is that important to know? How does that connect with the land claims today?
Well, we have an ongoing court claim right now dealing with the Douglas Reserves, and we're to go to court on March the 6th of this year on the Harper Ranch claim. About 320 acres right in the middle of our reserve.
And explain about the process. Did anyone question the process when the reserves were formed?
When the reserves were first formed, my understanding is that we had 46,000 acres. And I guess to some of the white settlers, it was probably some of the best lands in this area. So when after Cox, about 5 years after, there was a guy by the name of Trutch and let white settlers preempt land on our reserve.
And what does preempt mean?
Well, it's just take away, I guess. Yeah.
And in discussing land claims today, what do we need to know?
Well, you need to know I'd say the whole Shuswap area. This is two different specific claim and a claim on your reserve, such as the Douglas Reserve. And I guess you could go to the McKenna-McBride report on different reserves, and you really got to know the difference. Some affects your band only, and others, I think it's a specific claim, affects all the Shuswap people.
Clarence, can you relate some of your experiences in the residential school about your language, about how you were treated at the school, and what a typical day was like?
I'd say my worst experience, and I have to bring this one out, is when I was strapped for speaking my own language. When I first came to school when I was about 7 years old, that's the only language I knew was Shuswap. An average day, or pardon me, when I spoke my language, I got strapped for it, and it's just devastating for a 7-year-old boy to have that done to him. He doesn't know what he's getting strapped for one thing. The average a day at the Indian school was you got up in the morning and you said a prayer, you went to Mass, and then you had breakfast. You went to either work or you went to class in the morning or the afternoon. And if you went to class, you said prayers before you got educated, I guess, and you worked out in the field or in the dairy farm or the pig pen or the chicken farm, and we grew our own stuff here, like our own vegetables and potatoes, mowed our own hay, and that's about it.
Can you explain what we need to know about the land claims today? What this generation needs to know about the land claims?
Hire the best lawyers possible. You'll need them.
I guess we need to know the difference between specific and comprehensive claims, but we also need to know how we were connected to the land and why we need the land to exist.
Well, as you know, I guess we were really nomadic people. We lived in, say, West Wold. We came back down here, and I think we lived elsewhere, you know. We didn't stay in one specific area. And I think the way our reserves are set aside, you can see that. We have a fishing station in Chachiyun, which is about 50 miles from here. We have a fishing and hunting station in Heffley Lake, which is about 14, 15 miles. We have a small reserve in Gilead, which encompasses 160 acres. And then we have 2 little reserves and they're fishing and hunting reserves in Shumway. I think it's Shumway Lake.
What makes that land important to the Shuswap people? What makes it, why do we need the land to exist?
Well, to really exist, I mean, in our time, we were hunting people. We hunted for food, and, you know, we fished. We also lived on fish, so we needed all them.
Clarence, can you tell us and share with us why the land is important to the future generations of the Shuswap people?
I would say it's because we're growing back in numbers again. We need the land to, well, it's ours to start with. You know, we have hunting and fishing stations, and every time you turn around, they're being reduced. And in 1951, for instance, there's a map showing that we had about 100 acres around Heffley Lake, and today it's reduced to 46. That's the way we lived. We were nomadic people. And, you know, all these are hunting and fishing stations, and I don't see no reason why we should ever give that up.
Will our people exist without the land?
No.
Why?
Well,
why do we need the land?
We're today, I mean, lots of us farm. And we also need the logs. You know, there's lots of timber. And like in our reserve, I think we have about 9,000 acres of timberlands. And we have about 21,000 acres of flatlands, I believe, or 10,000. And the rest encompasses about, including the timberlands and the lowlands, are about 32,000 acres at present on our reserve. We need every bit of that. We also need to get back the lands that were taken from us. Right now, the people, when we had the Bill C-31s come back, we got no land for them, really. You know, very few, like most of the, I guess you would say the old timers got the choice lands. And today there's nothing left for the people that came back to the reserve.
I just want to ask this one part. I wasn't sure when we did that one. I just wanted you to explain more about the process of how the reserves were set up and how the land was preempted again.
Okay.
You can just take your time.
Okay. The land was, Sir James Douglas went out to make treaties with the Indian people. He sent Cox out in 1862 to do the Kamloops Indian Reserve, and this is all I can think of right now. I know he done 54 other reserves, and a few years later, a fellow by the name of Trutch, who was the land commissioner after Cox, reduced our reserve, or let the white ranchers preempt Indian reserves. And our reserve was reduced first to about 10,000 acres. And the Indian people found out about it, and I think they were going to go to war at that time. They were enlarged back to, in 1871 to 32,000 acres.
And how did the residential school and the churches affect the formation of the reserves? Like, were they working with the government to?
Oh yes, I would say they definitely were. I think they were. The residential schools really were devastating to the Indian people as far as their language, their customs, and their Indian religion. In 1920s, I think it was, the Quaicutlets, this is another group, a lot of them were arrested for doing the potlatch, which I think all Indians used to do. And their regalia were taken from them. They found some of the stuff in Berlin, London, New York, New Orleans, their face masks and stuff, and their drums, whatever they took, and people for no other spent 6 months in jail just for practicing their religion. Old people, I might add.